improve the economic options of these people. Which is people who are working for a real life for women have been working for all the time, in every area, right? But you come into this area and all of a sudden people are, writers and people who work for governments, with resigned sighs, are just going to leave her there. As if, somehow, first of all, as if this is just going to be, but secondly, as if she is somehow fundamentally different from the people who are doing the writing and resignedly sighing over her condition. So what's the big difference between them? Luck, education, class, race, having fought being sexually abused in childhood, which happens, to the majority of women, and a great, great, great many boys. The numbers we don't really actually accurately know, the boys, but the girls we do. And that's it. But people who are in a position to write about prostitution seem to think that what is there, some prostitute gene or something? I mean, what are they? Who do they think these people are, other than my friends? Yes, go ahead.
You say that there's really no difference between indoor and outdoor prostitution, but if you look at studies, for example, a study with a sample size of 800 done in New Zealand, it finds that people doing private indoor work have maybe a 1% annual rape rate, whereas researchers like Melissa Farley find that in the US, where prostitution is criminalized, outdoor workers experience rape 16 times a year, or 80% of individuals in street work in the US in a year will experience rape. So I'm just really wondering where is your understanding of prostitution as a continuum of violence against women coming from?
Well, as to that specific piece of data, there is some suggestion in some studies that there may be less violence experienced in indoor settings than people who are working outdoors. But you shifted the lines a little bit in the report on that study, which is to say private indoor is not the same as, I'm very interested in how they found 800 private indoor sex workers.
It's 800 of street workers and
oh, okay.
indoor workers.
All right.
I think indoor rape is about 5%.
Yeah, okay, there we go.
With about 30 to 40% in the US.
Okay, and then there's the public, legally sponsored brothel data that is separated out but included in the 800, right?
No, it's all prostitution is decriminalized in New Zealand.
No, I know, but I'm saying, right, okay.
So it's just a sample size of different sectors of prostitution.
Right. What is also found across all those different sectors, although there is, and this is a good ambiguity you point to, there's different data on how much violence is experienced in terms of the indoor-outdoor place. The outdoor, though, only has to do with where you get the work. It doesn't where you go do it, because they're not typically, as I say, doing it on the street. So if you're working the street, you find the person that you're going to do it with, and then you go indoors. Okay, so it isn't really a very good distinction. But what is also found is that the PTSD rate is no different, even though the violence rate may be higher in some places, particularly for street prostitution. Now that is interesting.
But I also read a study in Australia that found 0% difference between indoor sex workers and the general population in terms of mental health. So
okay, well, as to PTSD, that isn't actually right. But I am also not here to defend what happens to women every day of the week. Yeah, go ahead, the man right behind you.
I'm intrigued by what you've reported about Sweden. In particular, what launched that? Why would it have started there and not started somewhere else? Why has it not yet been copied?
it is being copied in a lot of different places, each in their own way, so that each place has its own legal setup. In other words, the prostitution is kind of the same everywhere, I'm sorry to say, for everyone with their cross-cultural specificity, but studying the status of women, especially violence against women, really puts a dent in your respect for cross-cultural diversity. Anyway, that is all, the more it is different, the more it's the same kind of thing. So the abuse is all a lot, very, very similar, but the legal structures and often the cultural, well, so there's some cultural pieces that are different too, but it all comes down to kind of, unfortunately, the same. But the legal structures for dealing with it are extremely different. And so the approaches to taking into account the impulse of the Swedish model, which is why I gave its 3 elements, are differently construed in all these different places. It happened in Sweden because Andrea Dworkin and I went there in 1990 and proposed it. It's the simple answer. And the real answer is that women there didn't give up until the year 2000 when they got it, and there was a majority women in parliament, which I think is probably not a coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
Yes? Yes, ma'am.
Would your analysis of prostitution extend itself to arranged marriages between young girls and older men, in the sense like the father or the family's pimping their young daughters to men for a dowry?
Yeah, I'm like against that. And you don't have to call it prostitution, but you are perceptive to see the parallel structure, I would say. And it's so amazing, like nobody's ever really unwound all these things, but there are so many marriage for money arrangements, and sometimes, and it's very hard to keep straight, because sometimes the man's family pays the man to take her, other times the family of the man has to pay the woman's family to be able to take her. You see what I'm saying? They're like, lobola is different from dowry, from all this, and nobody's untangled all of that in order basically to say, so how come she always ends up feeling like she can't leave because money was exchanged, or 2 goats, or maybe 3 goats. If she, it's in an upper level marriage, but it's, how come, for the price of a badly used car in the streets of Poland, the woman is bought, and doing this kind of an analysis of that. I would love to see that done. But anyway, child marriages, just to begin with, are a violation of international law. And then there's the familial arrangements around them. And the reason is because of the recognition that this is not something that people can exercise real choice in at that time in their life. As problematic as the term always is, it does get a little better with age. It's a matter of degree, but degree matters. Yes?
I wanted to ask, I recognize the opportunity to speak with you here today is very special, and a lot of people don't have it. And I was wondering if someone's knowledge of this issue comes from pop culture, like the movie Taken or Kite Runner or some of the other movies Hollywood has made. Do you think that's helpful in getting people to think about the issues? Are there factual inaccuracies or misrepresentations that someone might have if that's where all their knowledge came from?
Depends on the source. There are very good films out there, beginning to be especially, showing what it's like from the perspective of the people to whom it's done. And there are others that are really deceptive and exploitive and pimp-backed, I may say so. And so everybody's out there doing that. And sure, this is a real non-answer to your question, but you can get a lot out of what's out there, and you can also really be taken in by 26 minutes of propaganda. Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit further on your perspective on the intervention strategy posed by people who conceive prostitution as sex work, as far as distribution of condoms? And in particular, I'm interested in how you conceive of it in relation to, say, something like needle exchange programs in public health strategies in dealing with issues like this.
Yeah, I don't have views on needle exchange programs. And also women aren't a drug.
No, I mean, in that parallel, the intravenous drug users would be analogous.
No,
They've
well,
done
but
such
they really
prostitution.
kind of aren't, because the thing that's being used is the drug in the one case and a woman in the other. And so, there's something kind of abstract and narrow about saying, here's an object that is going to be placed in between the user and the used, when in fact you're ignoring that the used is white powder in one case and a human being in the other. So anyway.
So removed from that analogy then, can you just discuss what qualms you may have with sex work, public health activists who distribute condoms to prostitutes?
Oh no, I don't have any problems with that. I think they should distribute them in schools and drugstores and parks and all kinds of places where people who might need them would be able to access them.
Maybe a better question would be, do you have...
I just don't want to see Bill Gates' money going to support the brothel system, which is what it's doing. He's funded all this AIDS work internationally, and after we screamed about this for like 10 years, he went, oh, okay, we'll just give the money directly to the Indian government, which now, through a series of intermediaries, ends up going into the same brothel system. The idea here is, to quote, protect the women. Nobody's really considering I think people like him should consider what it would take to end their exposure to this disease. In other words, end their place in prostitution. Get them real options, which is what they're asking for.
Time for one more.
Okay, go ahead.
Thanks, and I applaud you for your message. It really means a lot. And I just wanted to know what you thought of the recent Craigslist decision not to, or to take away a section of ads in which sex workers were advertised. And some people who objected to that decision said that now these ads will be shifted to other more insalubrious sources.
Yeah, I actually wrote the brief in the case with various other people that got organized the effort that produced the demonstration that brought down the house that Jack built. Yeah, got that out of, that got Craigslist exposed for what they were doing, along with a lot of other groups. And so I'm for them having done what they should have done a long time prior to when they did it, which is stop pimping people on their pages. And what has happened is that it's gone into the back of the Village Voice, and all that business is now there on backlist at Village Voice, and there will be a demonstration on November 16th between 4:30 and 7 in front of the Village Voice in New York City from those nice people who brought you the Craigslist assault to tell them that they should stop pimping people, selling people on their pages. And so that fight is ongoing.
Thank you very much.